Hello and welcome to Perry Pencil. To all newcomers, subscribe now and be alerted whenever I upload a new video. Hello everyone, this is Perry Pencil, here to bring you my next tutorial. I can't take the credit for this video though. The credit goes to Vidya Lingam Geetham. I hope I pronounced that the right way. If I didn't, please forgive me for that. So for today's video, we will be covering the Scarlet Spider. Alright, let's get started. The first thing I always like to do is start out with a line at the top of your page. I say probably about an inch down, and do the same thing at the bottom of the page. And the reason why I do this is just so that you know where to end the figure on the page top and bottom. Once you completed that, divide the page in half and then go across the middle. And this right here is just pretty much to show you where you want your figure to be on the page. Next, go ahead on and start the oval shape for the head. Another oval shape horizontally for the neck. Right after that, if you notice, I have an arc that's kind of going in the center. And then I'm gonna measure the head twice. Once for the chest. And I'm gonna move down, and then the next head will be the waist. Once completed, you can then go ahead and lay in an oval shape that is for the entire torso. And what that does is cover the two most important areas, which is the chest and then the waist. Take a line right across just below that oval shape, just below the head. Then you want to put two circles on either side of the oval shape for the body. And those two oval shapes, circles, will represent the two shoulders. And right here, right now, I'm establishing the neck, which is the width of the oval shape that is horizontal. Now I'm going to establish his waist, which is going to be a square or a cube shape. Notice I'm going over the arc that is the shape that Scarlet Spider is going to be in, because his body's not going to be straight up and down. Using the oval shape, I'm going to go ahead and start putting his arms in. Notice I'm going to be dealing with an oval shape here and then another oval shape, and it's going to create a cylinder. Now I've moved right on to the left arm, and I drop the shoulders in really quick, and I'm gonna go ahead and put the oval shape on the left arm, and that's going to do the same thing as the right arm. The difference with the left arm is that the shoulders overlap in that bicep. Then I have the forearm coming in, and then what you want to do for the fist is drop in a simple square shape, if you notice I'm doing here. Then come over to the right arm and draw a simple oval shape for his forearm, and then you want to drop in a slightly oversized square. Notice what that does is forces it forward, and then that allows the fist to kind of come at you, and it pushes the oval for the forearm back into space. Go ahead and drop a thumb in there. Notice that I'm using the outside of the square, and then I'm coming behind there and dropping in the forearm a little bit more. Now for the chest, drop in an angular line here, and then come on the outside of the left arm and establish the the outside of the chest. Now I'm putting in ovals, dropping this in really quick. The oval shape for the shape of his leg. And the legs are going to be done generally the same way as the arms, but it's just larger because the legs are larger. I'm putting in oval shapes and then creating cylinder shapes here. Notice I put a circle where his knee is going to be. It's going on an upward slant towards the arm. And then I'm creating another oval for the leg, the bottom portion of the leg, the calf muscles. Notice the inside is lower than the outside. And then we'll come on the other side of his body and drop this in here, creating the contour. And notice right now we're just drawing the figure. So we're laying the figure in very loose here. Now I'm measuring the thigh, the left thigh, so that the right thigh will match in length. Notice I'm marking it with my pencil here. And drawing a simple circle to stop where the knee is going to be, just like I did with the left leg. Once that's established, I'm going to put a circle in for the knee. And as I did with the left leg, I'm going to put these oval shape for the calf, and then the outside of the leg here. Make that a little thicker. And then kind of square off the knee. And then establish the ankle by putting the oval shape in, or circle shape, excuse me. And then we'll establish his feet. Notice I noticed this be able to stop the feet right there where the line is that I established at the beginning. And do the same thing for his right foot. Now we're going to jump on up to the top of the figure and start establishing some points like his chest. And I'm pretty much moving at a pace where I'm like sketching in some lines. So don't be too alarmed. Now we're going to start adding some detail. If you notice here, I'm just starting to darken in the contour or the top of Scarlet Spider's head. I divided his head in half. That way I can establish the right and the left side of his head. And notice what I'm doing here. I'm just taking my time and getting the contour done, which is important. You want to establish the contour. Make sure you take your time. Now I'm going to go ahead and start to put his lens in, or some people may call them goggles, or whichever you prefer. And notice how simplistic any Spider-Man character you draw, essentially, it's pretty much the same. It's really not that difficult to do. They're very simple shapes to put in. The lenses on his mask take up a great portion of the head, actually, so you don't really have a lot to do there. I'm going to go ahead and clean up the top a little bit. And throughout this drawing, you'll see me use what I call, or what is called rather, the kneaded eraser. That's just so that if you need to clean something up so that you can make it clearer. For this case, in this video, I wanted to do that so that you can see what I'm doing with his head. And I have his right and left lens done on his face. I'm going to go ahead on and start to deal with, he's wearing a hoodie, so let's go ahead and get the hoodie established. If you noticed, I'm using the pit of the bottom of his neck for reference. And then kind of doing the same thing on the left side of the figure. And I'm creating just contour, a thick, not a really thick line, but a line that establishes the look of a hood. Now right now, I'm drawing the strings that you can tighten the hoodie up with. And for right now, we're just going to create some lines just to establish it. And here, the hoodie is actually cut off right at the shoulder, which I think is unique, and it kind of shows off the physique, if you will, the musculature. And it's pretty much stylized in a way that's different. Now if you see here, I did some flexion lines here. His waist is twisted, so I threw some lines in there. And I'm establishing the other side here where the top of the shoulder is, and then now you want to go ahead and put the bicep in there. And I'm going to sketch the bicep and the tricep coming in. And then here I had the forearm coming in. So if you follow along with what I'm doing here, just notice I'm taking my time. I'm dropping in some subtle shapes and establishing the musculature of the figure. And of course, we can start adding in some detail. He has a bracelet on here, which I'll add in later on. Now I'm going to go ahead and work on his fist. If you notice, I dropped a circle in right here so you can follow that. And I have the indication of his thumb, which is a small little X here. And I have the thumb so that it can cover the rest of the knuckles here to make a fist. So if you notice, I'm counting here 1, 2, 3, and the fourth being the pinky. And the fifth, the fist is pretty much established here. And every now and again it's okay to just kind of go back and drop some thicker lines in just to establish some contours. I'm dealing with his waist here. Got some flexion folds here. And then establishing a kind of like a halter top, if you will. It's not a full hoodie. It looks like it stops just above the waist. I'm going to go over to his right shoulder, and if you notice, I'm dropping that in as the muscles contour drawing here. Just remember, as y'all are watching this video, a lot of contour is important because what it does is establish the shape of the figure. And I'm dropping in the bracelet just as it is on the left arm on his right arm for consistency's sake. And then finishing out the forearm. And we're adding the muscle coming off the elbow here. Now we're going to deal with his fist. We're going to drop in that first knuckle, middle, ring, and pinky. And off these, I usually use this as a guide to drop in each finger. Of course, the ring finger, or index finger, is protruding out the most. Then the middle finger recedes back a little bit. Dropping his thumb in here. And you have the index finger, and then finally we have the pinky finger here. Now I'm gonna go back in here and clean those circles up that you saw me apply here. And if you notice, you can see it a lot clearer now, and I can make better decisions this way. Now when you can lightly see things where things are, you can go back and add more detail here and not necessarily have to draw over top of those circles, leaving it looking more confusing. For the bracelet, we're just dropping some simple circles because that's all they appear to be from this position here. And then that's what the bracelet would look like. It's just circles. Just tighten up some lines here. Now I'm going to put a suggestion of his neck in so it doesn't look like his head is floating. Now we're going to deal with some simple shapes here. Put an oval there right where the center line is. Of course, I'm going to clean that up a little bit so that that line is not extremely prevalent. So he has this cool belt in that has like this dial on the middle of the belt. A circle or oval within the oval. Very simple. We just have the oval at the top, leaving space at the bottom. And then put lines for the belt. And establish some oval shapes here. He has about maybe 3 or 4 going off the side of his waist. And just do the same thing on the left side. Darkening in those I'm going to go ahead and establish the spider on his chest. I actually think this one probably is one of the better spiders on his chest. They really wanted you to see that there's a spider on his chest, and I think it's kind of cool. Almost looks like it's airbrushed on. Certain images anyway. So if you notice what I'm doing, just kind of putting some simple shapes in, almost like triangles, but not connected completely. And of course, for the back side of the arachnid, got like a little diamond shape there. And just clean this up and lighten it up a little bit. Of course, I don't want those strings that tightens up the hood to get overpowered by the symbol of the spider. So just lighten it up a little bit. Now we're going to start dealing with the bottom portion of the spider. And I'm darkening the top portion of it here so that the bottom is equally noticeable. And the leg that goes right beneath that is the same shape repeated. It's just slightly smaller, so it fits just underneath the larger part of the leg. So it's pretty much playing around with spacing here and then kind of getting the shapes to match. If you notice, the right from the left, they're supposed to be identical. Doesn't have to be 100% perfect, but just enough so that you can recognize the style of the spider that's on Scarlet Spider's hoodie. Making the chest there a little bit noticeable. Just going over some things lightly. And just so that it's not too confusing, I'm just dropping in some shadowing here. Putting a little bit of oblique line there. Some flexion folds right there. And now we're going to start dealing with his leg, the left leg. So if you notice, all you're doing at this point is going over what we've already established early on in the drawing, and now we're doing what's called the contour drawing of his leg. We can start adding some detail to his kneecap, and how that kneecap behaves when it's bent this way. Notice I have the kneecap, and then I have the calf muscle that kind of folds underneath the knee, giving it an overlapped look. coming to the outside of his calf and doing a higher muscle, the outside, which is higher than the inside muscle, which is slightly lower. And just like his wrist, guess what? Wouldn't you know it? His his ankle has the same thing, not exactly the same, but kind of almost like a bracelet for your ankles. So I would assume, of course, this is, I believe, the 90s character. Let me know in the comment section if he is or isn't. But the ankle here looks like it has some kind of device or things he may hold in there, kind of like a utility belt for your ankle. Moving on down to his foot, if you notice, I'm darkening in the contour of his foot. And the entire leg is almost done here. If you notice, I'm coming under his bottom here and dropping in the contour there. Now we're going to move over to his right leg and establish that kneecap. Notice I'm going off of the shapes that are already there. I should hope that by this time, anyone that is following this tutorial, you already have your cylinder shape, circle shape, so that when you do your contour, you have something to go on. Sometimes it's very difficult to draw freehand unless you have that ability. In this case, I prefer to use almost like a mannequin type of deal, so that when you go to draw it in, you don't have to do that much in order to get the contour going. And just like his left leg, you want to put that ankle bracelet in. And drop that box in there as well. Whatever he has in there that he may need during battle, I suppose. And then do the contour for his right foot. Just going over some things. You could follow along as well and just kind of follow what I'm doing. And in each of my tutorials, I always encourage, if sometimes it appears that I'm moving a little quick, definitely pause it if you need to. Now, if you notice, I jumped on up here to the right arm and darkening in some of the details of his muscles. And if you notice, this bracelet now is similar to his waist, that has those oval shapes that's going around it. Now, I don't know whether these may be cartridges or something like that, similar to the original Spider-Man Peter Parker version. But it looks like this may be used for something during his battles as well. Going on ahead now and then darkening in, the strings that is used to tighten the hoodie. And just doing some simple lines here, overlapping lines. If you double the lines up, it'll definitely give you the effect of that to make it look like strings there. And notice throughout this tutorial, I have been switching back and forth between two pencils. This pencil that I have now is an 0.5 lead mechanical pencil, and the yellow pencil that you saw before that is an 0.9. And the difference is the line weight. This line weight that you see now is used for darker, and it has a softer lead to it, so you can go dark. And now it's the fun part. Now, if you like Spider-Man's webbing, or Scarlet Spider, his webbing, or drawing webbing in general, this is pretty much how you do it. You establish a line first, or I should say a trajectory of different lines. And in this case, by this point, the 90s, you have Spider-Man, and what he does, he has webbing going all over the place, especially after Todd McFarlane established webbing that kind of goes crazy and kind of goes all different directions. And in the case of Scarlet Spider, it's the same thing. But if you notice, I'm following the trajectory, And what that does is I know where it's going. It's going in between his thumb and his index finger. Of course, clean it up here so you can see it better. And I'm going to go ahead and then change the size of the way his thumb is so that you can kind of get a clearer image of the webbing going in between the index finger and the thumb, and then coming out of the pinky side. So just tighten up on his thumb here. And then I have the other side of the webbing going around the back of his body, and then up, and it's actually going into his other hand here. And here's, guys, where you can have your freedom, your creative freedom, if you will. The lines don't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be a straight line. It doesn't have to be perfect curves or anything like that, because webbing is generally looked upon as kind of going crazy and chaotic and behaves in a way that is not consistent. So when you're putting these lines in here like this, it really doesn't matter as long as you convey that his webbing is kind of coming out of some place and he's spinning the web and jumping around with it. So I'm basically saying you don't have to follow what I'm doing identically, but you can infer in some way or have some kind of webbing going on to where people understand what's going on in this drawing. And then of course you could have the webbing come behind his head and then go off the page. What I like about that is it kind of continues your mind off of the page, and it'll just have your mind connect somewhere. Maybe it's connecting to a building, or it could be going anywhere. But that's the idea, is that the webbing continues off the page, so it lets your imagination go. Now I'm going to straighten this up for you so you can get an entire look. Let's go ahead on, and if you need to at this time, kind of go over things and sharpen them up. And notice I have my 0.5 lead here, and I'm adding some additional lines for a metallic look on his bracelet. And I'm going on in here and darkening some points on the webbing. And here, adding detail to the other bracelet. At this point, connecting all of the dots, if you will. And feel free to start to establish where you want your shadows to go. Finalizing some of the rest of the web here off the page. And that's it for this portion. Hope you guys are still here with me at this point. For this tutorial, I normally don't do this, but we'll start adding in some shadow. Let's jump on ahead, dealing with his face or his mask, lightly putting in where I want the shadow to go. And lightly start to shade where you want the shadow to go. So I've established that I want the light to be coming from his left side and then the shadow is going to be on the right side of his mask. And for those of you who may be struggling with shadowing, just take this as a lesson and experimental lesson. I like to encourage anyone that comes to my tutorials that it's a learning curve. It's not you trying to match or compete or anything like that. Anytime that I draw, it's an exercise. And I suggest the same thing for you watching this. So you notice I went on ahead and dropped a shadow in the hoodie and around his neck, now behind his head. And what that's going to do is pop his head forward. If you notice, it's bringing some dimensionality to this drawing, starting to pop some things forward and set some things back and giving it depth. And during this segment of the video, this is where you really can start getting your skills in, if you will, and start to try and show off a little bit of detail. Here's another technique where I use the eraser to kind of erase the highlight if I want to separate the highlight from the shadow. I actually call this part drawing with the eraser. It's an old term that I heard a long time ago and is not often used, or maybe it is, but when you actually draw with the eraser, it does establish some things that you might not be able to establish had you not used the eraser at all. It would just be stuck being dark. He's just doing some indication shadow here for his forearm, and then another one for his bicep and tricep. And notice I'm not going too crazy with the shadowing. I'm just doing just enough of what I would call suggestive shadowing. It's not like a Batman drawing where he's almost 80 to 90% covered in shadow, or Spawn or anything like that. This right here is just creating a balance between lighting and shading. Now we're dealing with the left leg here and dropping the shadow in there. And notice I established a very thin line here. And the reason why I did that is because you want to have what people would call a cast shadow. That's where you have the shadow and then you see the contour light of the legs that's coming off the other side of the leg. It's like the light is bouncing off the other side of the leg even though there's a shadow there. So it's not a completely flat shadow. Same thing with his foot. Then under his thigh, you can just lightly go in and drop a shadow there. And another thing I do want to add, when you're drawing and doing shadowing, you don't have to go extremely dark. Only reason I say that because if you make a mistake, you can easily go in with your kneaded eraser and clean that mistake up very easily. But if you go too dark, it'll take a little bit of work to get it clean. So again, if you follow along what I'm doing, and you'll be fine. You see me dropping in shadows here and there. They're very light shadows. They're not extremely dark. Like I said, the percentage is probably about 30% or maybe 40% at best. But I'm not going still dark to the point where I couldn't erase a mistake if I made it. Doing the same thing with his right foot, dropping that shadow in there, or suggestive shadowing. Getting tricked up there with my tongue. And now we're dealing with his right shoulder. And this is important because what it does, it indicates the musculature of the 3 parts of the shoulder. And that completes it. I think we're done here. That concludes this video. I hope you were able to follow this tutorial. If you hung out with me up until this point, I really appreciate that. Give this video a like, subscribe, and click that bell for the notification. That way you'll be able to keep up with my tutorials or other categories I upload to. Thank you for stopping by, and until next time, take care.